Good morning, friends, and welcome. I'm Cassidy Carson, and this is The Life of a Writer. Today, I think we're going to have a little real talk about postmenopause because I am well over a decade into the experience, and I didn't even realize there was such a thing as postmenopause. I didn't know that menopause basically is a day, as far as I understand, when the transition between perimenopause and postmenopause happens. And my perimenopause, for the most part, was pretty uneventful on the symptom front. And I felt very lucky about that. Um, the the transitional period, that particular day or brief period of time, whatever it might be, came and went really without me knowing it had happened until sometime later, which I believe is true of most people. And then the postmenopausal phase has been fairly uneventful. It was fairly uneventful for many, many years. But recently, I've noticed a shift, and I'm not sure exactly why. Um, And I'm really not going to get too deep into the whys and the wheres and the hows. I just want to talk about what's been happening with me in the hope that if someone else might be experiencing these things, it will help you at least start to figure out that you're not losing your mind. Because initially, I really thought I was. I, as you can see, I am curled up in a blanket, still wearing my pajamas, haven't showered, so my hair is a bit of a mess because it is 5:30 in the morning and I've been up since 3:45. The temperatures outside right now are currently in the teens, which makes this interesting because the reason I woke up was that I was overheated. And it wasn't a hot flash. I got hot. I got too hot to really sleep. I also heard our furnace kick on because it was so cold outside. So we keep the temperature down at night, obviously, for reasons of being able to sleep and because it can be very expensive to run the furnace constantly. And normally, on most nights, the house stays a comfortable temperature and the furnace doesn't kick on until about dawn when we hit the coldest part of the night. But this morning, the furnace kicked on probably before I woke up. But living in excuse me, living in an old house that creaks and groans with every little fluctuation in temperature or wind or anything, I could hear the pipes in the walls making noise as they heated up because that's what happens. Pipes expand and contract depending on the temperature of the water and the air around them. And I think most of us understand that. So that normally is one of the things I think that will get me going in the morning is the fact that I hear the furnace kick on and I realize, oh, it's probably about dawn. It's okay to get up now. But this morning it kicked on at 3:30, 3:45, and I happened to be going through a cycle where I was overheated anyway. So I got up and was in my recliner watching some YouTube while I was waiting for my body to cool down enough for me to go back to sleep. The problem was that my brain decided to wake up. Excuse me. And, you know, just thoughts looping through my mind about things that I needed to do, which I'm really not on a schedule. I'm retired. I mean, I wish my body would understand that. And for the most part, I've been doing pretty well. I actually have gotten to the point where I sleep until about 7 a.m. and a lot of days this just didn't happen to be one of them. So thoughts looping through my mind on repeat. Now I'm cooled down again, which is nice, and that's why I'm all curled up in my blanket. But I don't think I'm going back to bed. So it's going to be a long day. Unless I get a nap in later. Sometimes I do that. When it's warm or at least a nice temperature, I can sometimes stretch out on the lounger in my sunroom and nap there. Or I can nap in my recliner. Sometimes I nap here on this sofa. I have a little TV over here with a DVD player, and I will put in a movie that I've probably watched a million times as background noise, which actually helps quiet the thoughts in my mind. So that is an option for later. But in the meantime, excuse me, I'm awake. And oh, I'm feeling things because now obviously my sinuses have started draining, which is always fun. And for the most part, today my body feels good. I'm a little sore from shoveling snow the other day, but that's something where I was like, oh, okay, I know that this soreness is based on the fact that I did this activity. The surprise aches and pains are the ones that are a little more difficult to deal with. Oh, I have a stitch in my side, what the heck happened there? Or I just stood up wrong and now my knee is hurting. Or, oh, I haven't moved my head in a while, so my neck is all stiff. And those are the things that I'm really struggling with sometimes, because if I can't identify what's wrong, my mind automatically goes to the worst case scenario. And I think that the anxiety and that thought process is also related to postmenopause. Oh, I'm sorry. The sinus drainage is completely unrelated to menopause. That's something that I've had for many, many years. But the general feeling that my body isn't, or I don't have control over my body, maybe that's the best way to put it, because I think when we're younger, at least in my case, I know this isn't true of everyone, but it feels as though our body is on autopilot, and we just kind of get through the day and we don't really think about things. And unless you have maybe an illness, like a chronic illness that you're dealing with a lot of issues, both physical and mental or emotional, those kinds of things could really wreak havoc with your mental health. But I think for many of us, at least anyone who was like myself as a younger person, you just go through your day and you don't really think about how your body functions. And we don't eat the right things, and we don't sleep when we should, and we don't drink enough water, and yada, yada, yada. And, our body will rebound because that's what it's designed to do. But as we get older and our body changes, especially people who deal with female hormones, the shift is dramatic. And it's like you wake up one day and you just don't understand your own body after having inhabited for well over a half a century now. It's like, what the heck happened to me, and why did it happen so fast? So I think those are all normal experiences. I know that there are options for treating hormonal fluctuations and things like that, but as far as I'm aware, I am past the point where that would be helpful, because it seems as though that is more of a perimenopausal to early postmenopause situation. And I saw recently that if you're over 60, that's not really a good option for you. I don't know if that's true or not. And I don't know that I care to test that because I have seen with older relatives all the things that are prescribed, that you're prescribed one thing to take care of an issue, and then you may be prescribed something else to deal with the side effects of the thing that you're taking for your issue, and they just keep building and compounding. And I really don't want to go down that road. I'm already on some maintenance medications and they seem to be working well, so that's fine. But the truth of the matter is that our bodies change as we get older, and we need to learn to understand those changes. I don't think they're talked about often enough. We are given classes in school as kids to learn about puberty and the changes that we'll be going through at that time. Nobody ever talks about the shifts later in life. And I think maybe that's something that needs to change. The up and coming generations are probably having more real talk about these kind of things, but people in my generation and older probably didn't discuss it because that just wasn't something you talked about. I know my mother didn't talk to me about much of anything, honestly. A brief conversation with one of my grandmothers at one point, just because she had to sign my permission form. My parents were unavailable and I was staying with my grandparents at the time, and that was a very uncomfortable conversation. So it was a very brief one, and that was just about basically the changes that happen in puberty. She never mentioned what it was like for her to get older. They just didn't talk about things like that. And it's something that should be talked about, because if we don't understand what's happening, then that cycle of thinking that we're on the worst track, that our symptoms are something dire and not something that may be normal and that can be handled without a lot of medical intervention, maybe, because exercise and fresh air and proper diet and decent rest when possible, those things all help. Now, I'm not a medical professional by any stretch of the imagination, and I am not trying to diagnose anyone. I have no skills in that area or expertise, and I'm only presenting this as a discussion of what I'm going through as a 62-year-old postmenopausal woman who was up at 3:45 because I got too warm, and now I'm just having those endless thoughts on repeat, and it's a vicious cycle. So since I was feeling a bit lonely, like I said, at this point, hopefully JT has gone back to sleep. I didn't want to disturb him for too long. He did come out to check on me because I'm suspecting the bed got a bit cold. And he wanted to make sure everything was okay. And then, as he should, as someone with a little bit more common sense maybe than I have would, he's going back to sleep, because that's a nice thing to do on a morning where it's in the teens outside. And since I normally try to fit writing into my videos whenever possible, maybe not overtly, but I do discuss tangentially sometimes my writing life, which is what this is theoretically about. The brain fog of both the hormonal shifts and the sometimes sleepless nights can affect the ability for me to write. And I am on something of a self-imposed deadline to get my beta revisions done, which I've talked about ad infinitum on here. So I want to at least get some of that done today. I've had to limit myself to a couple cups of regular coffee a week because caffeine does not agree with me. So I can have very small amounts of caffeine a couple times a week without really feeling horrible, even though I absolutely love coffee. So decaf for me, but caffeine also helps me think and gives me maybe a little bit of energy, a boost, so to speak. So not being able to drink coffee every day has been rough. And I came to coffee later in life, so it's interesting that I started relying on it so much. I did drink a lot of caffeinated soda as a younger adult, regular Coke for a long time, then Diet Coke. Now I'm to caffeine-free Diet Coke. And I will say I've never been a Pepsi drinker. I can taste the difference between Coke and Pepsi. And it's not something I ever developed a taste for, probably because my very early soda experiences were with Coca-Cola. And some of it may be nostalgia, those foods we loved as a child that we have to revisit every once in a while because they just bring such I don't know, a happiness to us, a feeling of comfort in some ways. So having less caffeine and less sleep in some cases really does not bode well for my writing output and trying to concentrate on my writing. I think brain fog is something that happens as we get older, both men and women. And I do believe people with male hormones also have shifts. I've noticed changes in my husband as well. His are, I think, sometimes more apparent on a physical level than mine are because maybe my upbringing that, like I said, we just didn't talk about some things. So I think maybe in his case, he's more willing to discuss when he's not feeling well, and boy, do I know it. That's not to say he's a baby. He's worked through not feeling well many, many times, and I try my best to make sure he feels as comfortable as he can when he's not feeling well. But I always feel uncomfortable when he's trying to pamper me in return, and that's actually something that I am exploring in book 2 of Restless Spirits. Is the main couple in that book has been married a very long time. They're very familiar with each other. They've taken care of each other throughout the years, as long married couples do. And they're dealing with the changes of having gotten older and maybe a shift in the relationship dynamics. And there's so much to explore in that kind of relationship. So I'm hoping that some of what I'm experiencing is coming out in my writing so that I can maybe reassure other people who are feeling some of what I'm going through. Because, like I said, it just wasn't discussed, so I didn't know what to expect. My kids, they're very vocal about what they're going through, the research they've done, the medical interventions that they've tried. So I'm learning quite a lot from my kids about life in general. And they are getting to an age where they're going to be going through some life changes. 2 of my kids are now in their 40s, and one is approaching 40. So, yes, I had my kids young, but it's kind of startling that somehow the age that I sometimes feel that I still am when I look at my kids, that's how old they are. It's just a very, very strange experience. So, here we are. Now it's getting close to 6 a.m. on this cold Friday, February 20th, 2026, We've had multiple days of snow here in northern Nevada. It's been enough that the schools were closed for a couple of days, and state government was closed and delayed, and we'll see what happens today. The sun is supposed to come out, but here in Carson City, we ended up with over a foot down in the valley. We're at about 4,500 feet, so the snow levels came down pretty low. And if anybody has been following the news, you will have seen all of the mess at Donner Summit, Interstate 80 going through the Sierra Nevada, and the avalanche up there. My thoughts go out to everybody affected by that horribly tragic situation. I'm hearing that it was the worst avalanche fatality in U.S. history. So I don't know if that's absolutely true, because honestly, I think in many times they say in history, but it may be recorded history, that things may have happened that we didn't know about on a broader scale. So my thoughts go out to them. My thoughts go out to everyone who has been affected negatively by the weather, because it can be pretty harsh. And as I mentioned in previous videos, we had weeks and weeks of beautiful spring-like weather here. So the dramatic shift from being in the 50s one day to tons of snow is always startling, even though it inevitably happens here. We know that we don't get a lot of our snow in November, December, January. Sometimes it can be February and March. And probably 20 something years ago, when my kids were much, much younger, we took a spring break trip to San Francisco in April. We thought the weather would be fine, and ended up having to chain up on the way back over the mountains. So that was not fun, because it was just me and the kids, and I didn't really know how to put on chains, so they didn't stay on the car. I lost them. That was a mess. So I understand how frustrating it can be to have to chain up, especially if you have to go somewhere. In the case of JT and I, like I said, we're retired, so we can hunker down at home. We have our pantry stocked up, and we're just doing our thing here. JT hasn't gotten out to do his coffee writing for a couple of days, but I think he's going to attempt that maybe later today if he feels like actually getting dressed and going out in the cold, because there's going to be a lot of snow and he's stirring. So I think I'm going to end this now. Thank you for hanging out with me on this cold winter morning here in northern Nevada. I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week, and I look forward to talking to you again tomorrow. I'm Cassidy Carson, and this is the Life of a Writer. Take care.